Hello everybody. Good morning. It's morning here at the moment. Tell you what, I've been sneezing my head off since I woke up. It's getting cold here in Queensland, and I think it's just the season change. It happens every year. I say it's cold, but to most people it's probably not. But anyway, let's move on. Have you guys heard of SeaSteading? I hadn't. It's quite an interesting concept. Basically, the idea is that you start a community out in the middle of the ocean in international waters, and you live on these giant pontoons, like a big community of pontoons floating out in the water. And because you're out in international waters, you're not under the rule of any nation state, so you can develop your own way of life, your own government, cultures, new cultures, all of that sort of stuff. And it's just this experimental idea. It hasn't been kicked off yet, but a lot of very rich, like billionaires, are interested in it, and they're looking into it. Well, this first article is to do with, it's about one of the pioneers who's tried to kick it off. He's got this shack of a pontoon that he used to live on with his missus. As you can see in the photo, I would not want to live there. And for some reason, the Thai authorities want him arrested, and he may face the death sentence. And I don't get exactly why. I should have looked into this further. I might update it later. Okay, so I'm just going to get to the article here now. A Bitcoin couple charged with violating Thai sovereignty as Navy boards floating home. The Thai Navy has boarded the floating cabin of a fugitive couple who are prominent members of the SeaSteading movement and may face the death sentence for setting up their offshore home. Unbelievable. Death sentence. Thai authorities have revoked the visa of Bitcoin trader Chad Elawatowski and charged him and his partner, Suprani Thepdet, with violating Thai sovereignty by floating the cabin 14 nautical miles off the west coast of the Thai island of Phuket. The cabin had been promoted as the world's first seastead by the group Ocean Builders, as part of a movement to build floating communities beyond the bounds of nations as a way to explore alternative societies and governments. Quote, I was free for a moment. Probably the freest person in the world, Mr. Elawatowski posted on Facebook on April 13, days before the Thai Navy raided his vessel. The 46-year-old and Ms. Suprani, whose Facebook page describes her as a Bitcoin expert, trader, chef, and seastead pioneer, were not on board when the Navy boarded, having apparently fled after a surveillance plane flew overhead the previous day. The US Embassy in Bangkok said Mr. Elawatowski had engaged a lawyer and was being provided with appropriate assistance. According to Ocean Builders, the concept of seasteading has been discussed for years, but the cabin Mr. Elawatowski and Ms. Suprani lived on was the first attempt at living in what is described as international waters. There's got to be more to the story there because the death sentence seems very extreme for that. Alright, something a little bit weird. Red-eyed and black-winged creature. The Singular Fortean Society was contacted by Nefer Khepri. When am I going to get an article where it's just like Jane Smith as the name? Anyway, I shall continue. Nefer Khepri, who wished to share her late father's sighting of a black figure with glowing red eyes in 1976. I grew up in Waukegan. I grew up in Waukegan. My dad worked part-time nights at a Victory Memorial Hospital. After work one night, he went to help a friend who had car trouble at the Marathon restaurant, which was located along the train tracks by Johnson Outboard Motor Company, right on Lake Michigan. It was a full moon. They were in the parking lot where my dad was giving the guy's car a jump when Dad, as he often told it, suddenly felt scared, as if something was watching him. There were 2 or more very tall silos there, or some such structure. They were probably 3 stories high. As Dad looked up, in the moonlight he saw a black figure crouched down watching them. It had glowing red eyes. He told his friend to look, so they both saw it. Dad said the creature was probably around 6 feet tall, because it was so high up, and even from that angle, it looked large. It definitely was not a bird or anything he had ever seen before. Dad said he sensed it was evil. He removed the jumper cables, and he and his friend took off in his dad's car. They didn't even bother to lock up his friend's car. They were that frightened. As they drove off, they heard a loud swooshing, and then something seemed to hit and slide across the top of the car. He kept going, convinced that the thing was trying to drive them off the road. The next day, Dad was freaking out because you could see 3 long scratches on the roof of the car. I saw them myself. There were 4 of them, and it looked like the talon of a large bird had scratched the car. I can't say this sentence, I've been trying to say it 4 times or more. I'm just going to leave it like that. Here's a ghost one. You may have seen this one. It's been in the news a lot. It's been in the paranormal circles. It's about this ghost that attacked a baby. Couple believe baby was scratched by a ghost after catching it on the baby's monitor. A couple have shared spooky footage of a ghostly figure they believe scratched their sleeping baby girl in her cot at night. After Heather Bruff, 25, woke her 1-year-old daughter Lily Higgins from a nap and took her downstairs, she found 3 deep purple scratches on her cheek. Heather, from the US state of Michigan, recalls crying and asking her baby, "What happened to you?" I can't do it in a, like a frantic mother's voice, so we shall continue. Before running to her mother-in-law's house. Keen to find out what had happened, she checked the baby camera with her fiancé, Josh Higgins. The horrified couple claim they spotted a male figure quickly walking past Lily's cot before disappearing into thin air. On other occasions, Heather claims she's heard screaming, stomping, and laughing while at home alone, and was even woken from her sleep by the sound of a male shouting. Quote, "If I'm in the shower, I hear someone running up and down the steps," she said. I've read that so many times with hauntings, where the person's in the bathroom and outside they'll hear someone stomping down the hall or, stomping up and down the steps. It's very common. And she explained she woke up one morning and felt like someone was choking her. That's also very common. Alright, this next one's pretty cool, I reckon. It's very short, but the photos are interesting. Could be fake, who knows. So I'll just quickly read through this. Mountaineering expedition team has sighted mysterious footprints of a mythical beast, the Yeti, measuring 32 by 15 inches, close to Makulu Base Camp on 9th of April 2019. This elusive snowman has only been sighted at Makalu Barun National Park in the past. Sorry if that sounded confusing. The main thing is the photos, which I've put up there. Have a look. This next story is not paranormal at all. It's just a funny one that I came across on Reddit, and it's for my pommy friends out there. I've titled it Typical English, and it's by a guy called Douglas Adams. But it's typical. I don't think it's typical English today. This was back in 1976, and I think it is the way the British were back then, and probably a little bit today as well. Okay, let's get into it. I had gone to catch a train. This was April 1976 in Cambridge, UK. I was a bit early for the train, so I went to get myself a newspaper to do the crossword, and a cup of coffee and a packet of biscuits, then went and sat at a table. I want you to picture the scene. It's very important that you get this very clear in your mind. Here's the table, the newspaper, cup of coffee, and a packet of biscuits. There is a guy sitting opposite me, perfectly ordinary looking guy, wearing a business suit and carrying a briefcase. It didn't look like he was going to do anything weird. But then he did this. He suddenly leaned across, picked up the packet of biscuits, tore it open, took one out, and ate it. Right in front of me. Now this, I have to say, is the sort of thing the British are very bad at dealing with. There's nothing in our background, upbringing, or education that teaches you how to deal with someone who in broad daylight has just stolen your biscuits right in front of you. In the end, I did what any red-blooded Englishman would do. I ignored it, and I stared at the newspaper, took a sip of coffee, and tried to do a clue in the newspaper. I couldn't concentrate though. I was thinking, how am I going to approach this? What am I going to do? In the end, I thought, well, nothing for it. I'll just have to go for it. I tried very hard not to notice the fact that the packet was already mysteriously opened, and took a biscuit for myself. I thought, that settled him. But it hadn't, because a moment or two later, he did it again. He took another biscuit. Having not mentioned it the first time, it was somehow even harder to raise the subject the second time around. "Excuse me, I couldn't help but notice." What do you think of that? That is a terrible British accent. I apologise. We went through the whole packet like this. When I say the whole packet, I mean there were only about 8 biscuits, but it felt like a lifetime. He took one, then I took one. He took one, I took one. Finally, when we got to the end, he stood up and walked away. Well, we exchanged meaningful looks, and then he walked away. And I breathed a sigh of relief and sat back. A moment or two later, the train was coming in, so I tossed back the rest of my coffee, stood up, picked up the newspaper, and underneath the newspaper were my biscuits. He was the thief. That's hilarious. Both too polite to say anything to the other. Alright. So, yeah, that's all I got today. I think I've still got my morning voice on too. Sorry about that. It's because of this sinus that's going on with me. Anyway, I hope you all have a good day. See you guys later.